friends, and welcome to my channel. Welcome to Cookie Month! Throughout the month of December, you'll get 3 different videos with my best friend Jackie and me, and we're gonna show different cookie making videos. Our first video today is tips and tricks for making cookies. If you're new to making cookies or new to making like big batches of cookies for people.
If you're experienced, this is gonna seem pretty basic. You're gonna know what we're gonna talk about. But for someone who is intimidated by it or hasn't started baking and would like to, but feels like there's too much of a barrier, we're going to try our best to knock down that barrier to make it easier and simplified and still make beautiful cookies.
And if you are newly disabled and you're used to making cookies in a really complex way, this and the next few videos are some good tips and tricks for how to make them in a more simplified way that is easier for a disabled person.
I'm Jackie. I'm one of Maggie's close friends. I am not disabled, but I do have ADHD, so sometimes things get a little wild when I'm baking large batches. So I do have to think about things a little differently than my favorite, YouTubers that I watch. So Maggie here has a lot of different things here on the table that we can go through. First of all, when you're baking, your first thing you're going to need is a pan.
There's lots of different types of pans that you can use. I would say this is the most basic type of pan you'll find in the store. It works really well. It's got an edge so that if you're picking up your cookie tray and your cookies start sliding, they're not going to end up all over your oven. Not that that's ever happened to me before. Ever.
There's lots of different sizes. This is just going to be a smaller one. I live in an apartment building, so I tend to have smaller stuff in it. You can get really large ones that are meant for like the convection ovens at bakeries. I actually have one. It's great, but it does take up the entirety of the oven and causes things to bake unevenly.
The smaller one is also good because it's a bit lighter weight. And for me, that's really important. I can't do really heavy weights. So even with all of the cookies that you could possibly put, even with the heaviest cookies, this isn't going to hold too much. So it'll be nice and easy to take it in and out of the oven.
There are different styles before. I've seen the sheet style that's going to have no rims on it. So they slide right off. So it's going to be, if, trying to peel them off or take them off is something that you're going to struggle with. There are different style pans that could help with that. But getting things off the pan kind of leads us to the next thing. So when I was growing up, we either just used some sort of grease or butter, or we had the type of cookies that we rolled in sugar and we didn't put anything on them. Any way we did it, we had to get that spatula, really scrape them off, and then there would be residue left on the pan that we'd have to get off before we did our next batch. I was a full adult before I knew there were other options.
My favorite option is the parchment paper.
Love this. Love it so much. Amazing.
Parchment paper, not wax paper.
They're very different things and people mistake them. I know if you're an experienced baker, you're going to be like, what? They do, but
I've seen many people use wax paper and then complain that their cookies aren't just sliding off. Their cookies are stuck and it melted all together. Don't use wax paper in the oven.
Yes. And when you do use parchment paper in the oven, which it's made for, still you need to make sure you're not going over 450 degrees. I've had it catch fire, burn, smolder on the edges. Usually you will notice a little discoloration, but if you're under that 450, you're not going to have any issues. Like I said, paper does catch fire, so Don't do anything crazy. Most cookies bake at 350. You're going to be completely fine with that.
Mm-hmm. Another option, if you don't want the parchment paper,
a little bit environmentally friendly, if you're going to reuse year after year, a silicone mat.
Silicone mats.
These are little fancy ones that I got from making macarons. We will not be making macarons.
No, that is the more complex.
That is a very complicated cookie. Ignoring the circles, you can use these as just a typical baking mat, and these are going to be reusable year after year.
I have found personally, if you try to wash them in the dishwasher, or if you leave them for a while and don't get to washing them right away, after a while they get a bit of a residue on them. So if you have a hard time taking care of your dishes right after you're done cooking, they might not be the best option for you. And parchment paper is a good option in that case because you can just throw it away afterwards. Even with this kind of tray, I have a bit of a hard time pulling it out of the oven. So I always have to leave one corner without a cookie in it so that when I'm grabbing it with the oven mitt, I can get a really good hold of the pan without smooshing a cookie.
I'm a big fan of the full oven mitt because I have just burned every side of my arm. That spatial awareness is a butt sometimes.
I probably burn myself every single year when I make cookies because I make probably 12 to 15, maybe up to 20 batches of cookies every year. So I do tend to burn myself at least once. I generally prefer using an oven mitt over a hot pad because it covers more surface area of your hand and you're not going to burn yourself as easily. Oh, smart, smart, smart.
Medical plug.
Burn band-aids are the best things ever. I've used all the different burn creams and they hurt to put them on. These things soothe your burns. So I highly recommend these. She got me a pack of them for Christmas last year because I do tend to burn myself all the time. And they are very helpful. So highly recommend.
All right. So we've gone over pans and how to keep the cookies from sticking. Let's talk about actually getting the cookies onto the pan now.
If you want your cookies to be very even sizes and really quick and easy to scoop up, I love a cookie scoop. I have 2 different sizes here because I like making mini cookies when I make my big batches of cookies. If I'm making cookies for a crowd, you can try all 6 different flavors that I've made and you don't feel like crap after eating 6 giant cookies.
The body is willing,
Yeah.
but it ain't gonna hold up.
But if I'm just making cookies for some friends and I'm making one type, then I use the regular size cookie scoop. Also, some cookie decorations look better if you use a regular size cookie. Cookie scoops are different than ice cream scoops. They're really similar design, but the ice cream scoop is so much bigger than the cookie scoop.
What is this cool thing? I don't have one of these.
This is another of my favorite things. The one thing I don't like about this is that normally I like to make all of my cookie dough in advance and stick it in either the fridge or freezer and then just scoop out as many cookies as I want. This, you have to, the dough needs to be room temperature, and I've tried like taking it out of the fridge and letting it come to room temperature. It doesn't really work. So you really need to make your dough and then make the cookies right away. But this is a cookie gun. You open it up and you fill that hole with cookies, with cookie dough.
This is just like a cookie caulk gun.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. But then you put one of these over the end. They're little extruder shapes. You stick it on the end here after your cookie dough is in, and you pull that lever, and you have it right against the pan, and it makes shaped cookies. You can make probably 50 cookies in the span of 5 minutes with this thing. It's really useful.
How so you hold it like do you hold the barrel while you do it?
Yeah, that one I haven't tried yet because I just bought it this week.
Would you say this is like pretty strenuous to use, or like, you know,
you need
very
a bit of strength to use it, but it is very quick. But with this, you cannot use parchment paper or the silicone mat because the cookies need to stick to the pan a bit as you're pushing them out of the gun. But they're a very high butter cookie, so they'll stick when they're wet, but as soon as they bake, they just slide right off because there's enough fat in them that they won't stick to your pan.
So the cookie gun comes with its own recipe that you need to make.
Yeah, there's look up spritz cookies, and there's a few different varieties. These are also fun because if you have like the Christmas tree shape, then you can take some of the cookie dough and dye it green and pop out 20 green Christmas trees in 2 minutes. And it makes it very quick, but again, it's a little tricky to push it out because the dough is fairly thick. So they're not good for everyone, but they're good for some people.
So if you're able to get that strength out and do that without like getting too tired, it sounds like you could end up with some really cute cookies that don't take too much beyond that.
Yep. Also, the old one I had a steady handle and then the gun so that you squeeze them together. I think this design is actually better for me because I can get some leverage, and you put it right up against here and then you push down So this one has a lot more leverage. It's also metal, so it's more stable, but that makes it heavier. Whereas my old one was plastic, so it makes it a little lighter weight, but it broke after my second year of using it. So there are options.
R.I.P. cookie gun. All
Yeah.
hail the new cookie gun.
Yeah, I'm hoping the metal one will last a few more years than the other one.
Maggie, we're making cookies.
Yes.
This is a muffin cupcake mini tin.
Yes. There's a couple different ways you can make cookies with a tin like this. One of the ways I like making cookies is you just put maybe a third of the way up with cookie dough, and it makes a little like perfectly circular cookie that has a bit more height to it. So again, with the more height, you want to do it at a lower temperature. These ones you want to do about 325 and just add a couple minutes to your cookie recipe, and they should turn out just fine. But also, if you flip it over, you can make a little cookie cup by putting it over the edge of the cookie tin. And then those you can fill with sprinkles or candies, like little M&Ms or something. Or you could fill it with whipped cream, pudding, frosting if you really love frosting.
So my mom.
So there's lots of options you can do. It makes a different shaped cookie than if you're just putting them on a pan, but it's not a lot more effort than just putting them on or in a pan.
I've not done it this way, but it really seems like it's going to be just about the same amount of effort of putting in a pan, but you're going to get a super uniform shape. It's going to look a lot different from what everyone else brings to the holiday table, and it's going to make yours stand out. So,
and you can also, as soon as the cookies are done, put a little candy in the middle of each, and then it's super fun.
That's with any cookie.
Yeah.
I'm all about adding chocolate to sweet things because, sweet things just need more sweet things, yes. Right?
Although, adding a little bit of salt to a cookie is also so good.
Oh, for sure.
A little bit of salt with your sweet is it elevates your cookie.
If you do frosting, you're going to notice almost every recipe calls for just like a little pinch of salt, a quarter teaspoon of salt, and it does elevate.
Yeah.
We're talking about making cookies right now. We're not talking about decorating, but we have sprinkles on here because there is a way that you can make cookies, have them be decorated, and be done when you're baking them. Mm-hmm. If you do just a drop sugar cookie, so one that is going to flatten out while you bake it, so you're not rolling it out, cutting it. I love doing those. I do those every year. It's a huge to-do. It's a huge process. It's going to take a long time. But if you just do a drop sugar cookie, roll it in some sort of sprinkle, they're going to bake and flatten out and be covered in the sprinkles and be really cute. So this is kind of still at the beginning stage, but you're going to end up with a perfectly decorated cookie by the time you're done without having to get more dishes, more things going on. All right, time to talk about the things I hate.
These sprinkles are very pretty.
Gorgeous.
But they will hurt your teeth. Some people have broken teeth and crowns. They're too hard.
They're beautiful. I've seen these on a lot of cake decorating images and videos. I've used them. But if you're not going to get these behind your molars and take a nice good crunch, you can end up hurting yourself. These pearls are gorgeous, and I don't know why they keep making them. I have seen many people complain about how hard they are and how much they hurt. So as beautiful as they are, despite the fact that I have 5 million of them, because that's the only way they sell them, I hate them.
Yeah.
And Walmart has started selling these really beautiful custom mixes. Like one of them, I've already thrown it away, sorry. But it was gorgeous. It had all these like gold and rose pink, beautiful colors together, like a little piece of rock candy and these balls giant. It was inedible.
Yeah.
Like I was horrified because I'm like, do they soften when I put them on frosting? And so I left it sit for a couple of days. It does not get softer.
No.
That's a thing to worry about too. If you're not experienced baking, you're not super familiar with why we sell rocks.
Yeah.
I'm not certain either.
Yeah.
That's, if I'm not ready for it, it's not going to work.
And certainly don't serve them to people who don't know that those will hurt your teeth, because we don't want anyone getting hurt here. One of the things I mentioned earlier is that I make all of my dough in advance. I'll make my dough 2 or 3 days before I'm going to ever bake any of it, because for me, making all of the dough takes a lot of spoons. So I'll spend 1 or 2 days just making all of my cookie dough. I'll put it in either the fridge or freezer. Both work perfectly fine. If you're doing like a rollout sugar cookie, I would leave it in the fridge. But my molasses cookies, any chocolate chip cookies that I do, I'll actually ball those out. I'll use my cookie scoop, form all the cookie balls, and then freeze them in the shapes that you want to bake them in. Because then when you take a couple days to rest and when you're ready to bake, all you have to do is pull out however many portions of cookie you want to bake, stick them on the tray, put them in the oven. You might need to add another minute if you're freezing them, but it comes out absolutely perfect, and your dough will stay fresh for months in the freezer. And you can also just freeze cookies as well, but they do taste slightly like you've made them in the past and thawed them. Whereas the cookie dough, when you bake it, it still tastes like a fresh baked cookie. So that's how I do my cookies, because I do a lot of cookies every year.
So a really good strategy is if you get very exhausted very quickly and you want to be one of those people that roll up to a holiday event with like 15 different types of cookies, which is a lot. A good way to do that, you could make a dough. The next day, you can form the balls and then freeze them, or even the next couple days.
Mm-hmm.
And then start your next dough.
Yeah.
Take you the few days you need to ball them up, put in the freezer, and continue until you have all the cookies you want ready.
Yeah. What I do is when I'm finished with the cookie dough, I will put it in a freezer safe container and stick it in the fridge. And then when I'm ready to ball up the cookies, I will grab another freezer safe container. It has to be bigger because when cookie dough is compressed, it takes up less space than when it's rolled into cookies. But you take that new one, and I just will sit on the couch with the 2 bowls and the cookie scoop and just sit there and scoop out the cookies. And it's something that doesn't take too many spoons. I can sit comfortably. I can sit while doing it. And I can just veg on the couch watching TV and scooping all of my cookies, and then stick that in the freezer, and then it's ready for you.
And if financial concerns are a worry, you don't require a cookie scoop. I use a spoon. I use my palms in a spoon.
Yep. All of this stuff is, a lot of it is helpful if you need a bit of extra help and have a bit of extra money. If you don't have a bit of extra money, all you need, I would say, is a pan, a cooling rack. That one you don't necessarily need, but it helps, especially if you're doing lots and lots of cookies. And you don't even need the parchment paper or the silicone mat. You can just spray it with some butter or oil.
When I was a kid, you always use butter, almost always, unless it's an oil-based thing. But you can just rub that butter wrapper right on it. I made a face when she said you need a cooling rack. When I was growing up, we never had cooling racks. We just used paper towel. And you know what? Our cookies came out just fine. We just threw them on the counter with a paper towel, and it was fine. Yeah. So cookie racks are nice. They're not necessary. If you have limited space, though, if you can get those stacking ones.
I've got those. They're so nice.
That is like the Cadillac of the cookies. Like, it's, oh, wow.
Yeah.
You have multi-stacked. You have the double-decker bus of cookie sheets.
Yeah. Most of this stuff we're talking about is not necessary, but it is very useful. The cookie scoops, for instance, I'm bad at gauging the sizes of my cookies, and if they come out vastly different sizes, you're going to have some that are much darker and some that are much lighter than others. It's also a lot faster for me to just scoop it, stick it on the pan, scoop the next one.
Unlike my spoon method, where it's spoon, get it, a strong size, take a little out.
Yeah.
It works.
But there's nothing wrong with that method. Like Jackie said, it works. That's how I did it for many, many years before I decided that I could afford the cookie scoops. These are about $10. For the most part, you're just gonna find the regular cookie size. I had to search Amazon a lot before I could find the mini scoop, but I generally prefer mini cookies, so I definitely wanted the mini scoop.
So I don't have a lot of experience with, the physical exhaustion or the physical limitations of disability. What I have issues with are my ADHD issues. I get very scatterbrained sometimes. It's very difficult for me. Last time I baked, I tried to make all my dough at once. So I got out, I'm going to get out my flour once, I'm going to get out my sugar once, and I have 5 different bowls. Let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
That is much trickier than I thought it would be because, of course, you're going to remember I put it in this one, I put it in this one, I put it in this one, right?
Yeah.
I started being so confused if I doubled up, if I put it in that one or not. Like, does this one have salt? It's only a 1/4 teaspoon, so I can't tell if I put salt in it. There's also flour and sugar in here. So I was getting really confused, really stressed. I had to throw away my dry ingredients 3 or 4 different times.
Oh no.
I had 2 grocery bags full of just flour I threw away. So it can be tricky. So if you're doing stuff like that, you have ADHD, you've got to treat yourself like a baby sometimes and make it as easy as possible so you don't forget. Have note cards next to them or whatever you need to do to actually double check. So when you go back to look and you can't see in there, if you have it written down. It can get really tricky real fast when you have a lot of things going on. And also, when I was doing that and making my million cookies, guess what I had for dinner?
I usually, on at least one of my cookie days, I'll go 6 or 7 hours making cookies, and all I ate was sampling a few of the cookies because I would just forget to eat.
Yep. So I guess I'm having peanut butter cookies for dinner tonight as I keep going because I didn't have anything in the fridge. I didn't plan ahead to make dinner because I was planning on making cookies, and that was the sole focus of my night.
You get very hyper focused on the making of the cookies.
So plan to eat something. Like, it would be like if you're like me, you get scatterbrained, you have ADHD, plan on food. And you know what? If your oven's on at 350 for a couple hours, you know what bakes in the oven for a couple hours? And it would be right happy ready for you when you're ready to eat.
You can also do regular baked potatoes and have just some cheese and that shredded chicken that I showed in another video in the fridge ready for you so that you can just put it together in a minute when you're done.
Or when you have breakfast or lunch, just be like, I'm making cookies. I'm going to make double and put this in the fridge.
Yeah.
Because that's not something I ever think to plan about because I'm so focused on cookies.
Yeah.
And we need to take care of our bodies.
Yes.
And we should not eat cookies for dinner and then bring them to a family event the next day.
Yeah. If you are trying to bring cookies to a family event or a friend event or, just bring cookies, a work event even. But if you are going to plan on making 6 or 7 different kinds of cookies, make sure you work in advance. Make sure you balance the different types of cookies that you're going to make.
Ooh,
so you're
getting fancy.
So you're not just bringing chocolate chip and chocolate brownie cookies and chocolate you want
that's just a thing though, Maggie.
To balance the types that I have, so I make sure there's at least one that's chocolatey, at least one that's spiced. I make molasses cookies every year, but sometimes I want a cinnamon sugar cookie as well. I like to have something fruity in there. So you can either use freeze-dried fruit, but that's a bit expensive.
It is very expensive.
But it's really good.
I made some really great cookies in October that were freeze-dried strawberries. They were so good.
They were so good.
I'm really terrified to think about how much sugar is in it, though, because you have freeze-dried fruit, which is just concentrated sugar.
Yeah.
And then you're adding it to sugar.
Yeah.
So heads up on that if you have any sugar concerns or diabetic or anything like that. Not a safe cookie.
Yeah.
But I used most of this container.
And
this container was the cheapest one I could find. And it was $15.
Yeah.
So my cookies were over $15, and it was not a large batch. It was just a normal batch of cookies.
But you can also, if you want a fruit cookie, you could also use jam, and you can use that before or after baking. It'll change the consistency of the jam, but you can experiment with that.
Do you mix it into the batter, or you put it in a dollop?
I put it in a dollop in the middle. You can even
maybe for something like this, it would be a good bet.
Yeah, that might work. Or what I sometimes do if I'm doing rollout cookies, I have various sizes of hearts. So I'll do a big heart cookie, and then I'll do a second one the same size, but do a little cutout of a heart in the middle of one of the cookies. And you stack the two together, and then you put the jam in the middle and bake it. Again, slower because it's a stacked cookie, and that'll make it thicker. But it turns like a really thick, sticky, like syrupy consistency
the
from
liquid's
baking
being drying
it.
out.
Yeah. And they're really yummy. So I recommend them, but it's a little more complicated. But it's good to have varieties in your flavors.
And if you are encouraged and you start getting fancy and wanting to add things and change recipes, there are a lot of tips online to look into, because if you change too much, your cookies are going to be really affected by that. Like if you're adding more liquids or more solids, like things are going to be affected and tweaked, and they're going to need, how Maggie keeps saying, adjusting temperatures and adjusting bake times. You're going to have to consider that too. So if you're getting more creative, you're getting more adventurous, make sure you kind of reach out. There are lots of great resources online.
I like to ask Reddit forums or find Reddit forums, because that's just people helping people, and generally you can find someone who wants to do something similar, or if you ask a Reddit forum, they'll have good advice for you, and I'm sure there's a few that are helpful.
Unfortunately, if you're starting to get into baking right now, you're going to start noticing AI issues. It's really scary how much AI is getting into the baking world in online. Like you're going to see AI generated pictures, AI generated recipes. So when you find something that's good, save it, because who knows what's happening with the internet. So if you find a good recipe, like save it as a screenshot, copy and paste into a Word document, get it off the internet so you have it forever.
I have a mini notebook like this at home that is full of all of my cookie recipes, because I do make cookies every year. Hi, Pip. This is Pip. He's a little sweet man.
He's like, I didn't sign up for this. I wanted to be in your chair.
Yeah.
These were some tips and tricks. If you are an experienced baker that has a disability or has thought about things to help modify for your friend with a disability, please leave it in the comments. We're all about sharing more information. These are what we could think of based on our life experiences. I would love any more ideas. I tried reaching out. I tried reaching out on this Facebook group I'm in, and like I had like 7 different hearts, like, yay, good idea. And no one had any ideas to give me. So hopefully we can, create like a little database here just on this video. Thank you, everybody. And thanks for welcoming me onto the show.
Yes, thanks so much for watching. And remember, you are not a burden. You are worthy of love and respect. Take care. We love you. Bye-bye. Hi, friends, and welcome to my channel. I was thinking...
My bathroom needs some new caulking around the tub.
Yeah. Grab the pearl sprinkles.
Oh,
when you're done. When you're done.
This is